What is Philipp Kurashev's future role with the Chicago Blackhawks? I'll share my thoughts on that in the newly announced 1901 project.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As usual, a quick reminder off the top to go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. All of that is 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously, particularly subscribing to the channel as I'm currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers. If you're tuning in through an audio platform, go and rate and review. Those are also greatly appreciated. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app, and when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. That way, you can get $20 off to a sporting event, concert, or theater event near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Feels good to be back on the pod here today. I know it's been a little bit since I posted that last episode. This is my off-season, just an FYI, Blackhawks fans. We are now in that point of the summer where the Locked On Podcast Network has gone down to 3 episodes per week instead of 5. So the regularly scheduled programming every single day all throughout the week has a little bit of a twist on it now until the midway point of September when NHL clubs are just about to open their training camp. However, there is still a lot of good episodes that I have on tap over the next month and a half to kind of fill that bridge until we start to get those butterflies as the regular season is right around the corner. One of those being the main talking point on today's episode. Another fun topic of conversation here in the offseason is I'll talk about the Philipp Kurashev debate. As I'm sure you've all noticed by the title and the thumbnail for today's episodes, I'll discuss exactly what I think Philipp Kurashev's future role with the Chicago Blackhawks is going to be as they hopefully will take that next step in their rebuild here this upcoming season. First, just a little bit of a timeline for Philipp Kurashev. As a 4th-round pick in 2018, his ascension to the NHL was pretty notable. I mean, he was stepping onto the professional scene a lot sooner than even guys who were selected in the first round of that draft. And we got flashes from Philipp Kurashev in those first couple of NHL campaigns. He had that dazzling goal, if you all remember, against the Detroit Red Wings during the 2021 56-game COVID-shortened season. And we got some bursts over the next 2 years, but nothing like we saw out of Philipp Kurashev this past year. Obviously, his most successful as an NHLer, and particularly his most consistent. As I referenced, we saw little bursts of special play or some high skill, good skating ability, offensive-minded traits out of Kurashev, time to time, but he never was able to kind of put it all together for more than just a 1 or 2 game stretch. His notable outings were too few and far between until this past season. Not only was it his first time scoring more than 10 goals as he got all the way up to 18, but he also blew his old career high out of the water in terms of assists. Not only did he hit 20 for the first time, but he hit 30 and got all the way up to 36. Tally that with the 18 goals altogether. Kurashev wound up with 54 points in 75 games worth of action. Unfortunately, missed a little bit of time at the beginning of the season, if you all may remember. And quite honestly, if he got those 7 games with the way that he was playing at the end of the year and the chemistry he had established with Bedard, the opportunities and ice time he was getting as a top liner, right? Like the Blackhawks were really riding that trio to do most of their heavy work offensively. I really think if you put Philipp Kurashev in the lineup for all 82 games, he might have gotten to that 60-point plateau, maybe would have fallen 1 or 2 points short. But regardless, the point here is that Philipp Kurashev, with what he showed this season, I think kind of it led to us all having a little bit of a different idea as to what type of player Philipp Kurashev could potentially be down the road. However, one thing I do want to mention here today, and I think it's only fair to kind of think this as well, I wonder how much of what we saw out of Kurashev this past season was an outlier type of season, because it wasn't anything like we had seen from him in the past. He obviously got a really good opportunity along with Connor Bedard on that top line. Now, to be fair, Kurashev absolutely deserves credit for, being the one to get that opportunity with Bedard and running with it. Like, he made the most of that chance, never looked back, and, Luke Richardson didn't split up Bedard and Kurashev moving forward for the majority of the season. He absolutely deserves credit for that. However, I do wonder if his ceiling, or maybe the idea that we have of Philipp Kurashev's ceiling, or what type of player he could be for the rebuild, really hasn't changed all that much, despite him posting career highs across the board this past season. And another reason why I believe that, or another reason why I think this type of season that we saw out of Philipp Kurashev might be a little hard for him to sustain, is because of all the prospects and notable players that are going to be coming up over the next couple of years that have more significance and as high draft picks are immediately, you would think, once they do step onto the NHL scene, they're going to get good opportunities, because the organization really wants to be right with these guys. They really want them to hit, because if they do, they could be potential game changers for this organization. And I'm talking, obviously, Connor Bedard. We know he's going to be a top 6 piece. Frank Nazar looked really sharp, albeit in only 3 games of NHL action at the end of next year, but I think he's going to be a top 6 piece. I think Oliver Moore is going to be a top 6 piece. And then, too, you also have to consider what Kyle Davidson in the front office brought in this offseason. Obviously, Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi, those are 2 guys brought in to help this offense that was dead last in the league last season. They know we have to be better in that category to take a step as a franchise. So you think those guys are going to be getting top line opportunities. Taylor Hall is coming back and going to be healthy, coming off of his torn ACL. Remember, he was brought in to be a top line player along with Connor Bedard. And then even thinking long term, I really do think the Blackhawks could be in the mix for one of the top big name free agent forwards in the 2025 free agent class. And given the money that I know they are eventually going to have to give money to Bedard and some of these youngsters, but down the road, I do think, we'll see what ends up happening, but I wouldn't even put it past the Blackhawks to adding another established middle 6 type of player that's going to take a prime offensive spot. So kind of what I'm getting to here is, I expect Philipp Kurashev to be given an opportunity in training camp right away to prove that he is a top-line winger with Connor Bedard. I believe he's rightfully deserved that opportunity with how he performed at the end of last year. But he's going to have to earn it now, 100%. Just like everyone on this roster is going to have to earn their jobs because of all the additions that Kyle Davidson made in the offseason, the prospects that are stepping onto the scene, right? So I just feel like it's going to be hard for Philipp Kurashev to replicate those types of numbers unless he goes out there, smashes it this season, and proves that he is just not it wasn't a one-trick pony type of year, a one-off type of year, an outlier, as I was referencing earlier, the numbers that he put up last year. He's going to have to prove it again, I really think, to ultimately get that type of spot. However, I still think if we're talking about Philipp Kurashev's ceiling, I don't really see him as a top 6 piece for a Stanley Cup contender down the road. Now, obviously, this season is going to play out, and we're going to learn a lot more as to exactly what type of player Philipp Kurashev is. We don't know the answer to that, so we're talking hypothetical here. But I would say as of right now, and again, this could obviously change. He's going into his 5th NHL campaign. He's probably a third liner on a really good Stanley Cup team. And as a third liner, do I think he's capable of carrying the weight offensively, being the one who lugs the mail and drives play for his own line? I don't really see Philipp Kurashev as that type of player. Now, maybe could he be a good third liner with the right pieces around him? Potentially. However, I do wonder, just because of his skill set, because, he is a decent offensive player, a good offensive player. Again, we'll learn more about exactly what type of offensive player he is at the end of the season. but he's not very diverse. Like he's not really known for his defensive abilities. He's not rugged. He's a little bit small and skinny for his size. He doesn't play on the penalty kill, right? Like, can he be a power play 2 asset type of player down the road with an offensive mindset on the third line? Yeah, perhaps, but at the same point in time, I think you would want those guys to have a little bit more of a role on the team and be a little bit more diverse. So I just wonder, it feels like Philipp Kurashev is an offensive minded player who isn't like a true top 6 type of guy. Like a better Ryan Donato is someone that comes to mind, or even though this guy just got paid this offseason, kind of reminds me of a Jake DeBrusk, like a little bit of a tweener, right? Like a guy who can go up on the top line and produce, but that's not necessarily the spot you'd want him to be in when you're producing a Stanley Cup winning type of roster, or when you're trying to win a Stanley Cup. So it just makes for a weird type of situation for Philipp Kurashev. Now, obviously, he can go out there this season and he can put all this to rest if he goes and has another smashing campaign along with Connor Bedard. I still don't know if we're going to see Philipp Kurashev put up the numbers that he did last year. I just feel like his ceiling hasn't changed as much as maybe we have thought, and that leaves him in a little bit of a weird predicament with how this Blackhawks forward group is going to mesh over the next couple of years. With all that being said, what I'm kind of getting to is I just don't know exactly where Philipp Kurashev fits. Maybe there's a spot for him. Maybe there's not. I think it's a little bit up in the air, and that's why, like a lot of guys that are on the roster this year, particularly the younger ones, it's another big season to kind of figure out what we have. And again, I think this is why, as frustrating as it is as a fan, sometimes you have to be patient with rebuilds, because the Blackhawks still really don't know what they have in particular. Like, they're starting to get an idea, right? We saw Vlasic step onto the scene. They have defensemen that they're high on, but we're still figuring out what all these types of players are, if they're going to be capable NHLers, right? So it's a big year for multiple different guys, and as just the Blackhawks organization as a whole, to evaluate talent going into the next offseason, where I think they're going to make a big splash up front, hopefully, and then, kind of kick into gear being competitive once again. That's what I'd like to see, but it leaves Philipp Kurashev in a really interesting predicament. Go and comment down below your thoughts on Philipp Kurashev's future role with the Blackhawks, or if you think he doesn't have one, let me know your opinion on that in the comment section. I just think he's a little bit of a weird tweener. Let me know down below if you agree with me or not, but that takes care of my thoughts on the Philipp Kurashev debate and his potential future role with the Chicago Blackhawks. Coming up in just a moment here, Hawks fans, I'll talk about the details of the newly announced 1901 project that's set to hit the West Side. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend, and I'm here happy to announce that Game Time is now an official authorized ticket marketplace, of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I've been using Game Time for probably close to 10 years up to this point, back when I was in high school going to see the Blackhawks in their heyday, or going to see those great young Cubbies teams from 2014 to 2016. I always used Game Time, and I still use it to this day when I want to go and check out a sporting event, or want to go and see a concert with one of my buddies, catch a comedian for a stand-up event. I always check Game Time first, because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase your tickets. And with last-minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals, it's so easy to both find and buy MLB tickets now that baseball season has officially taken over. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app, and when you do, be sure to create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. Again, Game Time, use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Segment 2, something that has been announced recently regarding not just the Chicago Blackhawks, but the entire United Center area, which is of course, home to both the Blackhawks and the Chicago Bulls, is the newly announced 1901 project, which is a groundbreaking $7 billion investment project launched by Michael Reinsdorf, who's the CEO of the Bulls, and Danny Wirtz, who, of course, is the chairman now of the Chicago Blackhawks. Those two families co-own the United Center. They will be creating a project designed to, quote, transform the West Side with a jolt of new development, bridging neighborhoods and enhancing opportunities for residents, businesses in all of Chicago. This would include a 6,000-seat theater-style music hall, housing options from affordable to luxury, a 25-acre park for recreation and community gathering, upgraded parking facilities, improved pedestrian access, and enhanced workability, lighting, and bike lanes, not to mention a hotel and numerous retail spaces. So obviously this is a huge announcement that's going to be coming to the United Center. Phase 1 will be starting in the spring of 2025. The first phase is going to be transforming the parking lots that are surrounding the United Center into these new public spaces that they mentioned. They have a 25-acre park that they're going to be creating. That's going to be phase 1, is tearing down those parking lots and starting there in the spring of 2025. It's going to be a 10-year project, though. This is going to it's going to take a while. We're going to be seeing the works whenever you go on down to the United Center or whenever you're in the west side of Chicago on Madison. You're going to be seeing a whole lot of construction going on for the next decade. However, construction is supposed to be those construction projects are supposed to create over 4,000 jobs, 1,900 in which they are hoping is sustainable. And with this entire project, they're hoping to generate $104 million per year in tax revenue, with $4.5 billion in stabilized annual economic impact. So obviously this is big news to the West Side area, to the surrounding streets and neighborhoods to the United Center, and I think it's probably time for a revamp in that area. It's not exactly the brightest part of Chicago, to say the least, and can be a little bit sad at times when you're walking to the UC or walking on over to Fifth Third Arena. What I will say about this, though, is $7 billion. I mean, look, for the jobs that it's going to create in terms of the retail spaces, the hotel, the construction for all of this, that part I absolutely love, that it's going to help the economy there. $7 billion is just, it's a lot of money, though, and I really feel like $7 billion, and again, I think this is going to a good cause. I just see the number $7 billion, and I think about all the problems that are happening in Chicago and where else that money could go to. That's kind of where my mind goes a little bit, but I am excited to see what this project is going to turn into, and, you know, obviously I think this has larger idea, and they would love to have a larger impact than just on the United Center with the Chicago Blackhawks and the Chicago Bulls. And we've kind of seen some renovation areas at Wrigley Field over the years that kind of made that a little bit more fan friendly. You know, Wrigleyville is a little bit different of an atmosphere than the west side of Chicago, but I hope this will kind of spruce up the area a little bit, because I think we all know it is a little bit of a tougher part of Chicago there for sure. So I hope it's going to be really good for the neighborhoods and really good for the community, the overall city of Chicago, creating jobs and opportunities for people, providing new housing that I really do hope is actually affordable for people, although housing in Chicago is not really affordable for anyone at this point in time with the way that the world is. I'm not trying to turn this into a political conversation, but I just see that $7 billion number and I'm like, boy, oh boy, thinking about all that could go to benefit the entire city of Chicago. Like, it's just a crap ton of money, man. But this 10-year project surely is going to be interesting. I feel like it's going to be really good for the United Center area to kind of spruce it up and give it a little bit more jazz around it, because there's not really a whole heck of a lot going on that's good around the United Center leading up to Blackhawks games. So providing, I think, a better atmosphere all in all just around the arena is for the greater good, along with those economic impacts. It's going to take a long time, though. This bad boy is expected to be done in 2035. Knowing Chicago construction, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets finished later. But a big announcement, the 1901 project, $7 billion investment by the Reinsdorfs and the Wirtz family, the co-owners of the United Center. groundbreaking news that is going to be beginning in the spring of 2025. But there are my 2 cents on the 1901 project. Let me know your thoughts about this down below in the comment section. Are you excited? Let me know your feelings. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I do still have to get into an exciting update on Hawks forward prospect Ryan Greene. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a quick reminder to hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. If you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be, please make sure to go and rate and review the show. That always puts a great smile on my face, preferably a 5-star review. And also be sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with our local experts from Locked On. Plus, we got national shows that cover every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, before I wrap things up, I did want to be sure to talk about Blackhawks 2022 second round pick, the 57th overall selection in 2022, Ryan Greene, being named co-captain of the Boston University Terriers for this upcoming season alongside Shane LaChance, who was a member of the Edmonton Oilers organization. Quick congratulations to Ryan. An awesome accomplishment and something that I had talked about, I had foreshadowed on the show numerous times throughout the course of the summer since it was announced that Ryan Greene was going back to BU for his junior season. And when I broke that down, I referenced, Mike Donahue, the Blackhawks chief scout, said they offered Ryan Greene an entry-level contract and they thought he would have been ready to turn pro, but Greene ultimately turned it down to go back to Boston University for his junior season, as they unfortunately reached the Frozen Four this past spring, but wound up falling just short of their national championship dreams. Ryan Greene is going back wearing a letter this year. I figured he was going to be wearing a letter as an upperclassman, a guy who's put together a very productive first 2 years of college hockey, right? Taking that leap. He was the third line center his sophomore year, got some reps with the second line towards the end of things, then was utilized as the 2C last year behind that Macklin Celebrini guy. And now that Macklin has officially declared that he is turning pro, that perfectly allows for Greene to step into that top line center role. Not only is he going to be wearing a letter and going to be someone that all the guys in the locker room are going to look up to, but he's also going to be the head honcho on the ice, playing in all the top situations, taking meaningful faceoffs. I wonder how big of a role we'll see for him on the penalty kill this year, if at all. I would like to see that, but he's going to be a staple of the power play. He's been really big for them in that bumper role the last couple of years. So I really think this is going to be an awesome experience for Ryan Greene. And I even mentioned when I discussed Mike Donahue making those comments about Ryan Greene's decision, I said, well, it may be beneficial for him to make the leap to pro hockey right now, get under the Blackhawks guidance and get that experience. I really do think this is kind of a win-win situation. There was no real wrong answer there to Ryan Greene. And I just really believe he's going to get such a good opportunity with Boston University, right? Being in that captain role, again, like I said, being someone that his teammates are going to look up to on and off the ice. I think that's something that's just going to be so beneficial for him long term. And we've seen a couple of Boston University Terriers in the Blackhawks organization who wore letters for them during their college days, and Alex Vlasic and Drew Commesso turn out rather nicely so far. Of course, Comesso's only 1 year into his pro journey and hasn't even stepped onto the NHL radar, but I'm very high on him. We saw what Alex Vlasic did last year, and I really believe Ryan Greene could be a piece of the puzzle here in Chicago. So very excited. Hell yeah, Ryan. Super stoked to see what he and the Terriers are going to be up to this year. He's going to be down in the C for one of the most prestigious programs in all of college hockey while getting one heck of an opportunity. I believe he'll be centering their top line. Very, very excited to see what's in store for Ryan Greene and BU when they hit the ice later on this fall. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again to everyone who tuned in. Be sure, hit that like button, comment down below to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's available each and every day. If you're tuning in through an audio platform and somehow you don't already, I don't know if that actually would make sense. But again, just be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. If you really enjoy the content that I'm producing on a daily basis, even if you're someone who is just watching on YouTube, go and help me out. Please go and follow the podcast. It won't cost you anything and really does help me out tremendously. And same thing on the flip side. Even if you're a frequent audio listener, do me a huge favor. Go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. I'm really trying to run those numbers up right now, closing in on 2,000. And for those of you who want to follow me on socials, you can find me on X at Jack Bushman 2. Go and check out at Talkin' Hockey as well for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, cannot believe that we're already in August, man. Time is flying, but until the next episode, I believe it's going to come on Monday. So everyone, enjoy your weekends. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.